The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky landscape of Valdris Prime. Captain Jake Morrison stepped out of the transport ship and felt the harsh wind bite at his face. Around him, 24 Marines followed, their boots crunching on the red gravel. This was their first real test since joining the Galactic Federation military program. Jake looked at the other squads lined up nearby. The Vorthak soldiers stood tall and proud, their scaled green skin gleaming in the sunlight. Their leader, Commander Thresh, wore expensive armor covered in glowing symbols. The Kalani squad buzzed and clicked to each other in their insect language. Their captain had 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. Both alien species had served in the Federation for hundreds of years. The humans had only been members for 5 years. Everyone expected them to fail today. "Listen up," called Instructor Vex, a massive Vorthak with scars covering his neck. "Today you will face the Razorbacks. These creatures are the most dangerous predators on this world. They have claws that can cut through steel. They can phase through solid rock. Most importantly, they are intelligent. Very intelligent." Jake watched as 3 large metal cages were wheeled onto the training ground. Inside each cage, something moved in the shadows. The sound of scraping claws echoed across the field. "Your mission is simple," Vex continued. "Tame your assigned Razorback. Make it obey your commands. The squad that shows the best control will win extra supplies for the next month. The squad that fails will clean the latrines for a week." Commander Thresh laughed, a hissing sound that made Jake's skin crawl. "This will be easy for my warriors. We have neural control devices. The beast will have no choice but to obey us." Captain Zilk of the Kalani nodded her insect head. "My soldiers can project fear directly into the creature's mind. It will submit or suffer." Jake said nothing. He studied the cages and noticed something the others had missed. The Razorbacks were not pacing randomly. They were all facing the same direction, toward a cluster of rocks about 50 meters away. "Release the beasts," Vex commanded. The cage doors opened with a loud clang. 3 massive creatures bounded out into the morning light. Jake had read about Razorbacks, but seeing one in person was different. Each beast was the size of a small horse covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light. Their claws were indeed metallic, gleaming silver in the sun. Their eyes were golden and intelligent, far too intelligent for Jake's comfort. The largest Razorback, clearly the alpha, stood between the other 2 and looked directly at each squad leader. When its gaze met Jake's, he felt like the creature was reading his soul. Commander Thresh immediately activated his neural control device. A blue beam shot from his helmet toward his assigned Razorback. The creature snarled and took a step back, but then something unexpected happened. The beast seemed to flicker, like a bad video transmission, and suddenly it was standing behind Thresh. The Razorback had phased through the neural beam completely. The Vorthak soldiers raised their weapons, but Thresh held up a clawed hand. "Stand down. Let me handle this." He increased the power on his device. The beam grew brighter, but the Razorback just phased through it again and again, appearing in different locations around the squad. Meanwhile, Captain Zilk was having her own problems. Her soldiers were projecting waves of fear at their Razorback, but the creature seemed more annoyed than afraid. It sat down and began cleaning its claws, completely ignoring the psychic assault. When one Kalani soldier got too close, the Razorback swatted at him lazily, sending the insect tumbling across the ground. Jake watched both failures with interest, but his attention kept returning to those rocks. The alpha Razorback kept glancing in that direction, its ears twitching. It was worried about something. "What do you think, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Emma Walsh, Jake's second in command. "Should we try the sonic restraints?" "No," Jake said quietly. "Look at its behavior. It's not being aggressive. It's being protective." Emma followed his gaze to the rocks. "You think there's something over there?" "I think there's someone over there," Jake replied. "Corporal Bradley, take Martinez and scout those rocks quietly. Don't make any threatening moves." Tom Bradley nodded and signaled to Private Martinez. The 2 Marines moved slowly toward the rock cluster, keeping their weapons lowered. The alpha Razorback watched them carefully but did not attack. As the Marines disappeared behind the rocks, Jake approached the alpha Razorback. He stopped about 10 meters away and sat down on the ground, making himself smaller and less threatening. The creature tilted its massive head, studying him. "Hey there," Jake said in a calm voice. "I'm not here to hurt you. I think you're protecting something important." The Razorback took a step forward, then stopped. Its golden eyes never left Jake's face. From behind the rocks came Bradley's voice. "Captain, you need to see this." Jake stood up slowly. "Can I go look?" he asked the Razorback. "I want to help." The creature stepped aside but followed closely as Jake walked to the rocks. Behind the largest boulder, he found Bradley and Martinez kneeling beside a small form. It was a young Razorback, barely the size of a large dog. Its fur was lighter than the adult's, and one of its legs was bent at an awkward angle. "Broken leg," Bradley reported. "Looks like it's been like this for days. The little guy's in bad shape." Jake looked back at the alpha Razorback, who was now standing just a few meters away. The worry in its golden eyes was unmistakable. "It's your pup, isn't it?" The creature made a low, rumbling sound that was not quite a growl. "Bradley, get the medical kit." Martinez set up a perimeter. "Emma, bring the rest of the squad, but keep them back." No sudden movements. As his Marines went to work, Jake continued talking to the alpha. "We're going to help your little one. I know you don't trust us yet, but we're not like the others. We don't want to control you. We just want to help." Bradley returned with the medical supplies. "Captain, I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know how to treat alien animals." "You know how to set bones and stop bleeding," Jake replied. "The basics are probably the same. Just be gentle." As Bradley began examining the injured pup, the alpha Razorback moved closer. The other two adult Razorbacks also approached, forming a protective circle around the humans and the young one. Jake realized that all three creatures were family. "Easy," Jake whispered to his Marines. "They're just worried parents." Bradley worked carefully, using human medical supplies to splint the broken leg and treat several infected scratches. The young Razorback whimpered but did not struggle. It seemed to understand that the humans were helping. When Bradley finished, the alpha Razorback approached the medical kit and sniffed at the supplies. Then it looked at Jake and made that rumbling sound again, but softer this time. "You're welcome," Jake said. From across the training ground came angry shouts. Commander Thresh was still trying to force his Razorback to obey, and the creature was becoming more agitated by the minute. Captain Zilk's beast had simply wandered away and was now sunning itself on a warm rock, completely ignoring the Kalani soldiers. "Attention all squads," came Instructor Vex's voice over the communication system. "You have 30 minutes remaining to complete the exercise." Jake looked at the alpha Razorback. "I don't want to control you," he said. "But would you be willing to work with us? As partners?" The creature studied him for a long moment. Then it did something that surprised everyone watching. It walked over to Jake and gently pressed its massive head against the human's chest. The gesture was unmistakably affectionate. "I'll take that as a yes," Jake said, scratching behind the creature's ears. For the remaining time, Jake and his squad worked with the Razorback family. They helped move the injured pup to a more comfortable spot in the shade. They shared some of their water rations, which the creatures accepted gratefully. Most importantly, they treated the Razorbacks as intelligent beings rather than animals to be controlled. When Instructor Vex called time, the results were clear. The Vortex squad stood empty-handed while their Razorback prowled in circles just out of reach. The Kalani beast was still ignoring its assigned handlers, but Jake's squad stood calmly beside all three Razorbacks, with the alpha staying close to Jake's side. "Impossible," muttered Commander Thresh. "They must be using some kind of human trickery." Instructor Vex approached Jake's group cautiously. The Razorbacks watched him but showed no aggression. "Captain Morrison," the instructor said, "how did you accomplish this?" Jake looked at the alpha Razorback, who was now lying comfortably beside the recovering pup. "We didn't try to tame them, sir. We just tried to understand them. They're not beasts to be controlled. They're intelligent beings with families and feelings. Once we treated them with respect, they were willing to work with us." Vex made notes on his datapad, clearly puzzled by this outcome. The exercise had been designed to test dominance and control, not cooperation and respect. The human approach was completely outside his experience. As the squads prepared to return to base, the alpha Razorback approached Jake one final time. It looked directly into his eyes and made a series of soft sounds that almost seemed like a language. Then it touched its nose to Jake's hand before returning to its family. "I think it said thank you," Emma observed. Jake watched the Razorback family disappear into the rocky landscape, the adults supporting their injured young. "No," he said quietly. "I think it said goodbye for now. Something tells me we'll see them again." As the transport ship lifted off from Valdris Prime, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this exercise had been more than just a test. It felt like the beginning of something entirely new, something that would change not just how humans interacted with alien creatures, but how the entire galaxy thought about the relationship between intelligence and cooperation. The other species might have superior technology and psychic powers, but humans had something else. They had the ability to see beyond dominance and control to the possibility of true partnership. It was a lesson that would serve them well in the challenges to come. 3 months had passed since the training exercise on Valdris Prime. Captain Jake Morrison now found himself standing on the observation deck of Zarian Station, looking down at the mining colony below. The planet's surface was covered in deep holes and massive machines that dug precious metals from the red earth. But the mining had stopped 3 weeks ago. They attacked again last night, said Station Commander David Cole, a tired-looking man with gray hair, same as before. They came out of nowhere, phased through the equipment, and destroyed 2 more drilling rigs. We've lost millions of credits worth of machinery. Jake studied the reports on his datapad. 12 Razorback attacks in the past month. No human casualties, but the creatures seemed focused on destroying the mining equipment. The Federation's solution was simple and direct. Extermination order came through this morning, continued Commander Cole. High Command wants the entire pack eliminated. They're sending a strike team tomorrow. Lieutenant Emma Walsh stood beside Jake, also reading the reports. Something doesn't add up, Captain. Look at these attack patterns. They're not random. The Razorbacks are only targeting specific equipment. Jake nodded. The attacks were precise, almost surgical. The creatures destroyed drilling machines and ore processors, but left the housing units and food storage areas completely untouched. They're not trying to hurt people. They're trying to stop the mining. Does it matter? Asked Commander Cole. These beasts are costing us a fortune. The Federation wants them gone. Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors as an emergency announcement echoed over the speakers. All personnel to safe zones. Razorback pack detected approaching Sector 7. All personnel to safe zones immediately. Jake and Emma rushed to the nearest observation window. In the distance, they could see shapes moving across the rocky landscape. Even at this distance, Jake recognized the lead creature. It was larger than the others, with a distinctive white patch on its left shoulder. It was the same Alpha Razorback from Valdris Prime. I know that one, Jake said quietly. Impossible, replied Commander Cole. Valdris Prime is 3 star systems away. These are local creatures, Jake shook his head. No, that's the same Alpha we helped on Valdris Prime, I'm sure of it. He turned to Emma. Get our gear. I'm going down there. Captain, that's suicide, Cole protested. Those things will tear you apart. No, Jake said firmly. They won't. Trust me. 20 minutes later, Jake and Emma walked out of the main airlock wearing light environmental suits. Behind them came Corporal Tom Bradley and 3 other Marines. They carried medical supplies and basic tools, but no heavy weapons. The Razorback pack was waiting in the center of the mining field, sitting calmly among the damaged equipment. As Jake approached, the Alpha raised its massive head and looked directly at him. For a moment, neither human nor creature moved. Then the Alpha stood up and walked slowly toward Jake. When it was close enough to touch, it made the same soft rumbling sound Jake remembered from their first meeting. The creature recognized him too. Hello again, old friend, Jake said softly, reaching out to touch the creature's head. The Alpha pressed against his hand, just as it had 3 months ago. Emma watched in amazement as the other Razorbacks also approached, showing no aggression toward the human squad. How many are there now? Jake counted quickly. The original pack of 3 had grown to 12 adults plus several juveniles. They're thriving. But why are they here? Why are they attacking the mining equipment? The Alpha Razorback moved away from Jake and walked toward the nearest damaged drilling rig. It sniffed at the machine, then made a series of sharp barking sounds. The other pack members responded with similar calls. They're trying to tell us something, Emma observed. Bradley had been examining the drilling site while Jake communicated with the creatures. Captain, you need to see this, he called from near a large excavation pit. Jake followed the Alpha Razorback to where Bradley was kneeling beside a pool of dark water. The liquid had an oily sheen and gave off a chemical smell that made Jake's eyes water. Industrial runoff, Bradley reported. The drilling process uses coolant fluid and mineral extractors. It's all flowing into the groundwater. Jake looked around and noticed other contaminated pools throughout the mining area. The Alpha Razorback led him to a series of cave entrances that had been sealed with mining equipment. The creature pawed at the blocked openings and made distressed sounds. They're den sites, Jake realized. The mining operation is blocking their traditional denning areas and poisoning their water supply. Emma knelt beside one of the contaminated pools and tested it with her scanner. These chemical levels would be toxic to most carbon-based life forms. The Razorbacks aren't attacking randomly. They're trying to protect their home. The Alpha Razorback approached Jake again and made a series of complex vocalizations. Other pack members joined in, creating what sounded almost like a conversation. Jake couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They were asking for help. "What do we do, Captain?" asked Bradley. "The Federation wants these creatures eliminated." Jake looked at the Alpha Razorback, remembering how it had trusted him to help its injured pup. Now the entire pack was trusting him to find a solution to this crisis. "We find another way," Jake said firmly. "Emma, get me a detailed geological survey of this area. Bradley, I want samples of all the contaminated water, and get me a direct communication link to Dr. Lisa Chen at Federation Science Division." Over the next 6 hours, Jake and his team worked frantically to develop an alternative plan. Dr. Chen, the xenobiologist who had been studying Jake's reports from Valdris Prime, provided crucial insight into Razorback behavior and environmental needs. The mineral deposits they're mining are actually scattered throughout this entire region, Dr. Chen explained over the communication link. The current operation is focused on the largest concentration, but there are equally valuable deposits in areas the Razorbacks don't use. Jake studied the geological maps that Emma had compiled. "What about their phasing abilities? Could that be useful for mining?" Dr. Chen's voice became excited. "That's brilliant, Captain. Razorbacks can phase through solid rock to depths that human equipment can't reach. They could identify mineral deposits that our scanners miss completely." The plan that emerged was radical by Federation standards. Instead of eliminating the Razorbacks, Jake proposed relocating the mining operation to areas that didn't interfere with their territory. More importantly, he suggested establishing a partnership with the creatures themselves. "You want to hire the animals?" Commander Cole asked incredulously when Jake presented the proposal. "They're not animals," Jake replied. "They're intelligent beings with advanced abilities that could benefit everyone. Look at these survey results." The data was impressive. Razorbacks had located mineral deposits worth 3 times more than the current mining yield. Their ability to phase through rock allowed them to explore areas that were completely inaccessible to human equipment. "The Federation Council will never approve this," Cole said. "It's unprecedented." "Then we'll prove it works first," Jake replied. "Give me 1 week. If this partnership doesn't increase mining yields, I'll personally supervise the extermination order." The next morning, Jake found himself in the strangest briefing of his military career. 12 adult Razorbacks sat in a rough circle around him, while he explained the plan using simple diagrams drawn in the dirt. The Alpha seemed to understand immediately, but convincing the rest of the pack took several hours. The breakthrough came when Bradley demonstrated how the mining equipment worked by showing the creatures a small, portable scanner. The Razorbacks quickly grasped the concept of detecting valuable materials underground. Within hours, they were leading human teams to previously unknown mineral deposits. The first day's yield exceeded all expectations. The Razorbacks could identify ore concentrations with an accuracy that amazed the human geologists. More importantly, they seemed to enjoy the work. The creatures took pride in finding the richest deposits and competed with each other to discover new sites. By the end of the week, mining yields had increased by 300%. The contaminated water had been cleaned up and the blocked den sites reopened. The Razorback pack had grown to over 30 individuals as news of the safe territory spread to other groups. Commander Cole stood beside Jake on the observation deck, watching Razorbacks and human miners working together in the field below. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted. "The Federation supervisors are calling it the most successful mining operation in 50 years. Jake watched the Alpha Razorback directing a group of juveniles toward a promising rock formation. The creature had learned to use human hand signals and could communicate basic information about mineral types and quantities. "It's not just about the mining," Jake said. "Look how they've organized themselves. They're learning from us and we're learning from them." Emma approached with the latest reports. "Captain, we're getting requests from other colonies. Word is spreading about our partnership with the Razorbacks. 3 different worlds want human advisors to help them establish similar relationships with their local creatures. Jake felt a sense of satisfaction mixed with concern. This was bigger than one mining colony. The success here was challenging everything the Federation believed about relationships between intelligent species. There's something else, Emma continued. Intelligence reports suggest the other Federation species are not happy about our methods. They're calling it dangerous precedent and uncontrolled fraternization with alien beasts. Through the observation window, Jake could see the Alpha Razorback looking up at the station. Even at this distance, he could feel the creature's trust and confidence. The Razorbacks had chosen to work with humans not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. Let them complain, Jake said quietly. We've proven that cooperation works better than domination. That's a lesson worth spreading. As the evening shift began, Jake watched human miners and Razorbacks heading home together after another successful day. The creatures had become more than partners in the mining operation. They had become friends, protectors, and teachers. The pack that had started with 3 frightened creatures was now a thriving community that chose to work alongside humans. The implications were staggering. If this partnership model could work with other species on other worlds, it might change the entire structure of the Galactic Federation. But Jake also knew that change was never easy, especially when it challenged thousands of years of established thinking. In the distance, the Alpha Razorback raised its head and howled, a sound that was answered by the entire pack. It was a sound of contentment, of belonging, of home. For the first time in months, the creatures felt safe and valued. Jake smiled as he listened to their evening song. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, both humans and Razorbacks could rest knowing they had found something rare in the galaxy. True partnership based on mutual respect and trust. 6 months after the success at Zerion Station, Colonel Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the Federation transport ship heading toward Spore Haven. The promotion felt heavy on his shoulders as he watched the fungal world grow larger through the viewport. This mission would either prove that human methods worked with all alien creatures, or it would end humanity's involvement in beast relations forever. Colonel, we're receiving final approach clearance, reported the ship's captain, a nervous Kalani officer who kept glancing at the planet below. Are you sure about this, sir? The Thornlings have killed every expedition that tried to establish contact. Marcus looked at his team assembled in the briefing room. Jake Morrison, now a major, stood beside Dr. Rebecca Stone, a specialist in collective intelligence who had volunteered for this dangerous mission. Lieutenant Emma Walsh completed the core team, along with a dozen carefully selected Marines. The Federation Council is watching this closely, Marcus said. If we fail here, they'll classify all future beast encounters as military extermination missions. No more partnerships, no more cooperation, just destruction. Dr. Stone pulled up holographic displays of the Thornlings. The creatures were massive, standing 3 meters tall and resembling walking trees with thick bark-like skin. Their most terrifying feature was their collective consciousness. Every Thornling on the planet shared thoughts and memories instantly. Previous contact attempts used standard dominance protocols, Dr. Stone explained. The collective mind viewed this as an invasion threat. The response was immediate and deadly. Entire contact teams disappeared within hours. Jake studied the images of the destroyed Federation camps. The metal structures looked like they had been crushed by enormous vines and roots. What makes them so dangerous? They can control all plant life within a 50-kilometer radius, Dr. Stone answered. Trees become weapons. Grass turns into binding ropes. Even tiny flowers release toxic spores on command. The collective consciousness coordinates all of this perfectly. The transport ship entered Spore Haven's atmosphere and immediately encountered turbulence. Through the windows, the crew could see vast forests that seemed to pulse and move like living creatures. Vines as thick as starship hulls twisted around mountain peaks. The entire planet appeared to be one giant organism. Landing zone is clear, reported the pilot. But sir, the plant readings are off the charts. The forest is definitely aware of our presence. The landing was smooth, but the moment the ship touched down, the team could see the jungle responding. Trees leaned inward toward their position. Flowering plants turned to face the ship like curious faces. The ground itself seemed to shift and breathe. Remember, Marcus said as the team prepared to disembark. No aggressive moves. No weapons visible. We're here to help, not to conquer. The moment they stepped outside, Jake felt eyes watching him from every direction. Not just eyes, but an intelligence that seemed to come from the forest itself. The air was thick with spores that made breathing difficult, and strange humming sounds echoed from the trees. Dr. Stone activated her scanning equipment and immediately frowned at the readings. "Colonel, these spore levels are dangerous. The thornlings should be able to filter their own atmosphere better than this." Before anyone could respond, the forest erupted into motion. Massive vines burst from the ground around the human team, not attacking but creating a living cage. Trees groaned and bent inward, blocking out most of the sunlight. The humming sound grew louder, almost painful. Then they appeared. 12 thornlings emerged from the forest, moving with synchronized steps like dancers following the same music. Their bark-like skin was darker than in the Federation files, with patches of diseased-looking fungus growing along their limbs. The largest thornling stepped forward and spoke in a voice that seemed to come from all directions at once. "Why do you come here, flesh creatures? Your kind brings only pain and control. Leave now or become fertilizer for our roots." Jake stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible and empty. "We're not here to control you. We came because we think you're in pain. We want to help." The collective consciousness laughed, a sound like wind through dying leaves. "Help. Your Federation friends said the same before they tried to burn our sacred groves. Before they filled our rivers with poison machines." Dr. Stone was studying her scanner readings with growing excitement. "Jake, look at this. The spore contamination isn't natural. Something is infecting their root network. That's why they're so aggressive." The thornlings heard her words and their formation shifted. The largest one moved closer, its voice carrying notes of confusion and pain. "You speak of infection. How do flesh creatures know of root sickness?" "Because we've seen it before," Dr. Stone said gently. "On our homeworld, we learned to treat plant diseases. Your root network is fighting something foreign, something that causes constant pain and makes it hard to think clearly." The thornling collective fell silent. For several minutes, the only sound was the creaking of tree branches overhead. Finally, the largest thornling spoke again, its voice softer now. "The burning pain has been with us for many seasons. It grows worse each day. Our thoughts become clouded. Our children are born sick." Jake exchanged glances with Dr. Stone. This was the opening they needed. "Will you let us examine the infection? We might be able to help, but only if you trust us enough to show us the source." The debate among the thornlings was visible as conflicting emotions played across their bark-like faces. Some wanted to crush the humans immediately. Others were curious about a possible cure for their suffering. The collective consciousness struggled to reach a decision. Finally, the largest thornling made a gesture with its massive arm. The vine cage around the humans dissolved back into the ground. "Follow, but know that any betrayal will mean your roots join ours in the eternal soil." The journey through the forest was like walking inside a living cathedral. Trees formed arches overhead while flowers provided gentle lighting. Despite their pain, the thornlings moved with grace and purpose. Each step coordinated with the others. Dr. Stone collected samples as they walked, her equipment detecting higher and higher levels of contamination as they went deeper into the forest. "It's definitely a fungal infection, but unlike anything in our databases." They reached the heart of the forest where an enormous tree dominated the landscape. This was clearly the center of the thornling collective consciousness, its massive trunk pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. But the tree was sick. Black fungal growths covered large sections of its bark, and the light patterns flickered weakly. "This is our mother tree," the thornling leader explained. "Through her roots we share all thoughts and memories. But the dark infection spreads through her network, bringing pain to all our people." Dr. Stone approached the tree carefully and took detailed scans. What she found made her gasp with understanding. It's not just one infection. It's 3 different fungal species that have combined into something new. They're feeding off the tree's root network and producing toxins that affect cognitive function. Jake watched the thornlings gathering around their mother tree, their collective pain evident in every movement. "Can you cure it?" "I think so," Dr. Stone said, her voice filled with excitement. "We have earth-based antifungal compounds that should work. But the treatment will require direct access to the root network. The thornlings would have to trust us completely." The collective consciousness buzzed with debate. Trusting aliens with their most sacred site went against thousands of years of isolation and self-protection. But the promise of ending their constant pain was too tempting to ignore. "There is risk," the lead thornling said finally. "If you fail, Or if you betray us, the damage could destroy our entire civilization." Jake stepped forward and placed his hand gently on the mother tree's bark. The surface was warm and seemed to pulse with a weak heartbeat. "I understand the risk, but I also understand pain. We won't betray your trust." The treatment took 3 days. Dr. Stone mixed earth antifungals with local medicinal plants that the Thornlings suggested. The cure had to be introduced slowly through the root network to avoid shocking the system. During the process, something unexpected happened. Jake volunteered to undergo a temporary neural link with the collective consciousness to monitor the treatment's progress. The experience was overwhelming as his individual thoughts merged with the shared mind of an entire species. Through the link, Jake experienced the Thornlings' memories spanning thousands of years. He felt their connection to every plant on the planet and understood their fear of creatures who lived as isolated individuals. But he also shared human memories of cooperation, friendship, and the strength that came from choosing to work together instead of being forced to. The collective consciousness was fascinated by the concept of individual choice within group cooperation. For creatures who had always shared every thought, the idea that beings could choose to help each other without compulsion was revolutionary. As the antifungal treatment took effect, the pain that had clouded Thornling thinking for generations began to fade. The mother tree's bioluminescent patterns grew brighter and more complex. The entire forest seemed to sigh with relief. "The burning stops," the lead Thornling said with wonder. "For the first time in many seasons, our thoughts are clear." But the real breakthrough came when the Thornlings began experimenting with human-style individual decision-making within their collective framework. Instead of every thought being shared automatically, they learned to choose what to share and when. "You have given us more than healing," the collective consciousness said on the final day. "You have shown us a new way of being together, unity through choice rather than compulsion." Jake felt the neural link disconnect as his individual consciousness returned. The experience left him changed, with a deeper understanding of how different forms of intelligence could work together. As the human team prepared to leave Sporehaven, they were accompanied by 3 young Thornlings who volunteered to learn more about human cooperation methods. The collective consciousness had voted to establish permanent cultural exchange with humanity. "The Federation Council won't believe this," Emma said as they boarded their transport ship. Marcus watched the Thornlings waving goodbye with movements that looked almost human in their individual expressions. "They'll have to believe it. We've just gained allies who can control entire planetary ecosystems." Jake looked back at the forest where hundreds of Thornlings had gathered to see them off. Each creature moved independently now, but their actions still coordinated into beautiful patterns. They had learned to balance individual choice with collective purpose. "It's bigger than just gaining allies," Jake said quietly. "We're proving that cooperation creates possibilities that domination never could. The Thornlings aren't just our partners now, they're our teachers too." As their ship left Sporehaven's atmosphere, Jake could see the planet's forests pulsing with healthy light. The Thornlings had not only been healed but had evolved into something new. They had learned that true strength came not from forced unity, but from chosen cooperation. The lesson would prove crucial for the challenges ahead. Admiral Sarah Foster stood in the command center of Federation headquarters, watching the holographic display with growing alarm. Red warning lights flashed across the galaxy map as one system after another fell to the Dominion invasion. In just 2 weeks, the enemy had captured 12 Federation worlds using tactics no one had seen before. "Show me the Kepler station footage again," Sarah ordered. The hologram shifted to show the final moments of the Federation's most heavily defended outpost. The space station's massive shields held against the Dominion fleet's weapons, but then something impossible happened. Dark shapes appeared inside the station itself, materializing through the hull as if it were empty space. The creatures were nightmarish. They moved like giant spiders but had the muscular build of predatory cats. Their black carapaces reflected no light, making them almost invisible against the darkness of space. Most terrifying of all, they could survive in vacuum and tear through starship armor with claws that glowed with energy. "Void Stalkers," reported General Hayes, the Federation's military commander. "The Dominion has been breeding them for decades. They're perfectly designed for space warfare. They can phase through ship hulls, survive without air, and they're programmed with absolute loyalty to their masters." Sarah watched the security footage as dozens of Void Stalkers swarmed through Kepler Station's corridors, killing everything in their path. Federation soldiers fired desperately, but their weapons barely slowed the creatures down. Our traditional beast control methods don't work, Hayes continued. We tried neural suppressors, fear projectors, even direct psychic attacks. Nothing affects them. They're genetically programmed to feel no emotion except rage and hunger. Major Jake Morrison entered the command center, followed by Emma Walsh and Dr. Rebecca Stone. They had been recalled from Sporehaven when the invasion began. Jake's expression was grim as he studied the tactical displays. "How bad is it?" Jake asked. "Worse than bad," Sarah replied. "We're losing ships faster than we can build them. Every time we engage the Dominion fleet, those Void Stalkers board our vessels and slaughter the crews. Standard military tactics are useless against an enemy that can appear anywhere inside your ship." Dr. Stone examined the biological data on the Void Stalkers. "These aren't natural creatures. They've been heavily modified. Enhanced reflexes, redundant organs, artificial loyalty programming. The Dominion has turned them into perfect weapons. What about our allies?" Emma asked. "The Razorbacks and Thornlings?" Hayes shook his head. "High Command refuses to authorize non-Federation species for combat operations. They say it's too dangerous to arm primitive beasts." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "Primitive beasts? Is that what they're calling our partners?" Sarah placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "I know how you feel, but the Council is scared. They've never faced an enemy like this before. They're falling back on traditional military doctrine because it's all they know." The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the command center. New red lights appeared on the galactic map as emergency messages flooded in from the outer colonies. "Admiral," called a communications officer, "we're receiving distress calls from the Titan system. The Dominion fleet has broken through the defense grid. They're heading straight for the civilian stations." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with new determination. "General Hayes, how long before our reinforcement fleet can reach Titan?" 18 hours minimum, Hayes replied. "The civilians don't have that long." Jake stepped forward. "Admiral, give me authorization to contact our allies. The Razorbacks can phase through solid matter just like the Void Stalkers. The Thornlings can create living ships that regenerate damage. We have assets the Dominion isn't prepared for." "The Council will never approve it," Hayes protested. "Using alien beasts in combat violates every Federation military protocol." "Then don't ask the Council," Sarah said quietly. "Jake, you have 12 hours to organize whatever force you can. If it works, I'll take responsibility. If it fails, we're all dead anyway." 6 hours later, Jake found himself aboard a modified Federation cruiser approaching the Titan system. The ship had been hastily retrofitted with environmental systems to support multiple alien species. In the cargo bays, 20 adult Razorbacks waited alongside their human partners. 3 young Thornlings had grown specialized combat pods that could attach to the ship's hull. "This is insane," muttered Captain Ryan Murphy, the ship's commander. "We're flying into battle with a zoo." Emma checked her equipment one final time. Each human rider wore a simplified version of the neural link technology that Dr. Stone had developed on Sporehaven. It allowed basic communication with their Razorback partners and helped coordinate movement in zero gravity. The lead Razorback, a descendant of the original Alpha from Valdris Prime, approached Jake with the same calm intelligence he remembered from their first meeting. The creature had grown larger over the years and bore several scars from mining accidents, but its golden eyes still held that mix of wisdom and trust. "Ready, old friend?" Jake asked, scratching behind the creature's ears. The Razorback made a soft rumbling sound that Jake had learned meant agreement. Around the cargo bay, other human Razorback pairs were making similar preparations. These partnerships had been forged over months of working together in mines and exploration sites. The trust between species was complete. "Approaching the combat zone," announced Captain Murphy over the ship's communication system. "Enemy fleet detected. 12 Dominion cruisers and approximately 200 Void Stalkers in spacesuits." Through the viewport, Jake could see the battle already in progress. Federation ships fired desperately at the Dominion fleet, while dark shapes swarmed between the vessels like predatory fish. The Federation was losing badly. "Thornling pods are ready for deployment," reported Dr. Stone from the bridge. "They can create temporary air pockets around the Razorbacks and provide healing support during combat." Jake activated his neural link and felt his consciousness expand to include his Razorback partner. The sensation was still strange after all these months, but it allowed perfect coordination in the chaos of space battle. "All teams launch when ready," Jake commanded. The cargo bay doors opened to reveal the star-filled vacuum of space. The Thornling pods launched first, growing rapidly as they deployed living air bubbles and gravity fields. Then the Razorbacks leaped into space, their bodies adapting automatically to the zero-gravity environment. Jake felt the rush of phase shifting as his partner materialized inside a Dominion cruiser. Around them, other Razorback teams were appearing throughout the enemy fleet, bypassing shields and armor completely. The Void Stalkers responded immediately, turning from their attacks on Federation ships to face this new threat. Jake got his first close look at the creatures and understood why they were so feared. They moved like liquid death, their claws leaving energy trails as they slashed through metal and flesh alike. But the Razorbacks had advantages the Dominion hadn't expected. They could phase through attacks, appear behind enemies, and most importantly, they fought with intelligence rather than programmed rage. Jake's partner dodged a Void Stalker's charge, phased through a bulkhead, and appeared behind the creature to deliver a devastating blow. The battle became a three-dimensional chess game, as both predator species used their phasing abilities to outmaneuver each other. But the Razorbacks had something the Void Stalkers lacked: human tactical coordination and the ability to work as a team. "Emma, take your team to the engine room," Jake commanded through the neural link. "Tom, secure the bridge. I'm heading for their command center." The Thornling pods proved equally valuable, attaching to damaged Federation ships and rapidly growing new hull sections to seal breaches. Their healing abilities saved hundreds of lives as they created medical bays inside their own living tissue. The turning point came when Jake reached the Dominion flagship's command center. The enemy commander, a tall figure in elaborate armor, was directing the Void Stalker swarms through a neural control system. Jake realized that destroying this single control node would disable dozens of the creatures. But between him and the target were 6 Void Stalkers in close formation. Jake felt his partner's battle instincts through the neural link as they planned their attack. The Razorback would phase through the floor, appear in the center of the enemy formation, and create chaos while Jake targeted the control system. The plan worked perfectly. Jake's partner materialized among the Void Stalkers and immediately began phasing rapidly between solid and incorporeal states, making it impossible for the enemies to land a solid hit. While they were distracted, Jake used his weapons to destroy the neural control array. The effect was immediate. Throughout the Dominion fleet, Void Stalkers suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began fighting independently. Without their programmed unity, they became just another predator species that could be outmaneuvered by intelligent opponents. "All teams, the enemy coordination is down," Jake announced. "Press the advantage." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Razorbacks and their human partners systematically disabled the Dominion ships while the Thornlings provided support and healing. When the enemy admiral finally surrendered, nearly half of his fleet had been captured intact. Admiral Sarah Foster arrived with the Federation reinforcement fleet to find the battle already won. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching Razorbacks and humans working together to secure the captured ships, while Thornlings tended to wounded crew members from both sides. "Casualty reports," she requested. "Federation losses are minimal," reported her aide. 14 wounded, no deaths. The alien partners prevented catastrophic damage to our fleet. Enemy casualties are also light. The Razorbacks and Thornlings focused on disabling rather than destroying. Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and amazement. The human approach had not only won the battle, but had done so with unprecedented low casualties on both sides. Jake materialized on the bridge through his Razorback's phasing ability, both human and creature looking exhausted but victorious. "Admiral, we've secured the enemy fleet, but there's something you need to know." "What is it, Major?" "The Void Stalkers," Jake said. "They're not just weapons. They're intelligent beings who were forced into this role through genetic programming and neural control. Now that we've broken their conditioning, some of them are asking for asylum." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You're telling me the enemy's ultimate weapons want to defect?" "Not all of them," Jake replied. "But several dozen have approached our teams. They remember bits of their lives before the conditioning. They want a chance to choose their own path." Through the viewport, Sarah could see one of the massive Void Stalkers floating peacefully beside a Razorback team. The creature that had been designed as the perfect weapon was now asking for the chance to be something else. "This changes everything," Sarah said quietly. "If we can free the Void Stalkers from their programming, The Dominion loses their greatest advantage. Jake nodded. It's bigger than that, Admiral. We're not just winning battles. We're proving that cooperation and choice are stronger than domination and control. Every species we work with becomes stronger, not weaker. As the captured Dominion fleet was escorted to Federation space, Jake watched the mixed crews working together. Humans, Razorbacks, Thornlings, and even reformed Voidstalkers were learning to coordinate their different abilities for common goals. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. The Federation now had allies who chose to fight beside them, rather than weapons that were forced to obey. It was a difference that would prove decisive in the battles to come. Emma approached Jake as he watched a young Voidstalker learning to work with a Razorback team. Do you think the Dominion expected this? Jake smiled as he saw the former enemy creature carefully help repair a damaged Federation ship. I don't think anyone expected this. We're writing a new rulebook for how different species can work together. The victory at Titan proved to be the first of many. Word spread throughout the galaxy of the humans who had turned the Dominion's ultimate weapons into willing allies. It was a story that would inspire hope in the darkest moments of the war ahead. General Jake Morrison stood before the massive crystalline structure that had been unearthed on Titan's edge. The ruins were older than any civilization in the known galaxy, and they held secrets that could change the course of the war against the Dominion. Ancient symbols covered every surface, telling the story of a race that had vanished millions of years ago. The translation is incomplete, reported Dr. Lisa Chen, who had become the Federation's leading expert on ancient languages. But what we've decoded so far is incredible. This civilization called themselves the Builders. They created guardian creatures to protect their worlds from cosmic threats. Jake studied the carved images that covered the temple walls. They showed massive beings that dwarfed even the largest starships. The creatures appeared to be living mountains with the power to reshape matter itself. Around them, smaller beings that looked remarkably like modern species worked in harmony. How big were these guardians? Asked Colonel Emma Walsh, now Jake's second in command for all beast relations operations. Dr. Chen pointed to a scale reference carved into the stone. If these images are accurate, the smallest guardian was over 500 meters tall. The largest ones could be seen from orbit. The archaeological team was led by Commander Kex Thule, a Vorthak scientist who had initially opposed human methods but had grudgingly accepted their effectiveness after the victory at Titan. He approached Jake with obvious excitement on his scaled features. General Morrison, we found them, Kex Thule announced. The stasis chambers are intact. 3 guardians survived in deep hibernation. Jake felt a mixture of anticipation and concern. If these ancient creatures were anything like their images suggested, awakening them could be incredibly dangerous. What's their condition? Stable but weakening, Kexathul replied. The stasis systems are failing after millions of years. If we're going to revive them, it has to be soon. The team moved deeper into the ruins, following corridors that had been carved directly from solid rock. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the ancient symbols, making the walls seem to move and shift. Finally, they reached a vast chamber that housed 3 enormous crystalline pods. Inside each pod, Jake could see a shape that defied easy description. The creatures were indeed the size of small mountains, with bodies that seemed to be made of living stone and metal. Their features were noble and intelligent, like sleeping giants from ancient myths. The Builders called them World Shakers, Dr. Chen read from a nearby inscription. They were partners, not servants. The civilization fell when they tried to turn their guardians into weapons of conquest. Jake studied the nearest pod, watching the slow pulse of lights that indicated the creature inside was still alive. What kind of power are we talking about? According to these records, Dr. Chen said, they could manipulate gravity, reshape matter at the molecular level, and create or destroy entire ecosystems. They were living terraforming machines. Commander Kexthul activated his scanning equipment. The stasis pods will fail within hours. We need to decide now whether to attempt revival or let them die naturally. The decision was complicated by the ongoing war. The Dominion had regrouped after their defeat at Titan and was launching a massive counteroffensive. Federation worlds were falling again, and conventional forces weren't enough to stop them. The power of the ancient guardians could tip the balance, but only if they could be controlled. The Federation Council wants to use standard dominance protocols, Emma reported. Neural suppressors, loyalty programming, the same methods that failed with the Void Stalkers. Jake shook his head. Those methods destroyed the Builder civilization. We need a different approach. Dr. Rebecca Stone, who had been studying the ancient texts, looked up from her translations. There's something else. The World Shakers weren't just guardians. They were teachers. They helped other species evolve and develop. The Builders fell because they forgot this relationship was based on mutual respect. Over the next few hours, Jake and his team prepared for the most delicate first contact in galactic history. They gathered samples of food and water that might appeal to beings who had been asleep for millions of years. More importantly, they prepared to share the story of humanity's partnerships with other species. The revival process began with the smallest guardian. As the crystalline pod slowly opened, Jake felt the ground trembling beneath his feet. The creature that emerged was beyond anything he had imagined. The World Shaker stood 15 stories tall, its body a fusion of organic tissue and crystalline structures that sparkled in the chamber's lighting. Its eyes were deep pools of starlight, ancient and wise beyond measure. When it spoke, its voice resonated through stone and metal, making the entire ruins vibrate. Who disturbs the long sleep of Earthrender? Jake stepped forward, feeling incredibly small before this ancient being. My name is Jake Morrison. We're representatives of the Galactic Federation. Your stasis chambers were failing. We wanted to give you the choice of whether to wake up or continue sleeping. The creature called Earthrender studied Jake with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Choice. It has been long since anyone offered choice to the World Shakers. The Builders forgot this lesson in their final days. We know what happened to them, Jake said gently. We've read their records. They tried to turn you into weapons instead of treating you as partners. Earthrender's massive head tilted as it considered this. You know of partnership. Show me. Jake activated his neural link and called his Razorback companion, who had been waiting in the outer chambers. The creature phased through the stone walls and appeared beside Jake, its golden eyes reflecting the ancient guardian's starlight gaze. The meeting between species separated by millions of years was remarkable. Earthrender knelt down to examine the Razorback, its enormous hands moving with surprising gentleness. The Razorback, sensing no threat from the ancient being, approached and allowed itself to be touched. Fascinating, Earthrender rumbled. This creature serves you freely. Not serves, Jake corrected. Works with us. We're partners. Each brings different strengths to accomplish goals neither could achieve alone. Jake spent the next several hours sharing the story of humanity's relationships with the Razorbacks, Thornlings, and reformed Void Stalkers. He showed Earthrender recordings of the cooperative mining operations, the healing of Sporehaven, and the victory at Titan. The ancient guardian listened with growing amazement. The old ways return. Partnership instead of domination. Cooperation instead of conquest. Perhaps there is hope for this galaxy yet. As they talked, the other two stasis pods began their revival sequences. The second guardian, who called itself Stoneweaver, was slightly larger and more crystalline in appearance. The third, Void Toucher, seemed to be made of the same dark matter that composed black holes. Each guardian reacted differently to the news of their revival. Stoneweaver was curious about the technological advances that had occurred during their sleep. Void Toucher was more cautious, remembering the pain of betrayal by the Builders. Why should we trust your Federation? Void Toucher asked, its voice like the echo of collapsing stars. The Builders also spoke of partnership in the beginning. It was Emma who answered. Because we're not asking you to serve us. We're asking if you want to help save lives. The choice is entirely yours. The conversation was interrupted by urgent communications from space. The Dominion fleet had arrived at Titan's edge and was demanding the surrender of the archaeological team. Their ultimatum was simple. Hand over the ancient weapons or watch the planet burn. They think your weapons to be captured, Jake told the Guardians. Just like the Builders did. Earthrender stood to its full height, its crystalline structures glowing with inner light. We are not weapons. We are teachers and protectors. If this Dominion threatens innocence, we will stop them. But as partners, not as slaves. The three Guardians emerged from the ruins together, their massive forms visible from orbit. The Dominion fleet, which had been preparing to bombard the planet, hesitated as sensors detected the enormous energy signatures. Jake coordinated the defense from the surface, but the real battle was being fought in space. The Guardians moved through vacuum as easily as through atmosphere. their matter manipulation abilities allowing them to reshape reality around them. Earthrender created temporary planets that served as shields for the Federation fleet. Stoneweaver transformed asteroids into complex defensive structures that could repair themselves faster than they could be damaged. Void Toucher manipulated gravity itself, causing Dominion ships to miss their targets as space curved around them. But the most remarkable thing was how the Guardians worked with the other allied species. Razorbacks rode on Earthrender's shoulders, using their phasing abilities to scout enemy positions. Thornlings grew living communication networks that connected all the Guardians instantly. Even the reformed Voidstalkers contributed, using their knowledge of Dominion tactics to predict enemy movements. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. Instead of destroying the Dominion fleet, Void Toucher used its powers to disable their weapons and life support systems. The enemy crews were captured alive and given the same choice that had been offered to the Voidstalkers: continue serving through fear, or choose cooperation. Many of the Dominion soldiers accepted the offer. They had been raised in a society based on conquest and domination. But the sight of ancient Guardians working peacefully with dozens of different species opened their minds to new possibilities. As the immediate threat ended, Jake found himself sitting on Earthrender's massive hand looking out at the stars. The Guardian had become fascinated by human philosophy and wanted to understand how such a young species had developed such effective cooperation methods. Your people have learned in centuries what took our civilization millennia to understand, Earthrender said. How? Jake thought about all the partnerships he had witnessed, from the first injured Razorback pup to the cosmic-scale cooperation happening around them now. I think it's because we remember being alone. Humans spent most of our history isolated on one world, fighting among ourselves. When we finally met other species, we realized how much stronger we could be together. Earthrender nodded, a gesture that caused small earthquakes on the planet below. The builders forgot their humble origins. They became drunk on power and tried to dominate those who had chosen to help them. We will not make that mistake again. The three Guardians chose to join the growing alliance, but on their own terms. They would help defend innocent worlds and teach other species about matter manipulation and cosmic engineering. In return, they asked only for respect and the freedom to pursue their own goals. As the combined fleet prepared to leave Titan's Edge, Jake watched hundreds of species working together in ways that would have been impossible just months earlier. Humans coordinated with Razorbacks while Thornlings provided support. Reformed Voidstalkers shared intelligence with Federation crews. Ancient Guardians offered wisdom to anyone willing to listen. The Dominion won't know what hit them, Emma observed as she watched the incredible sight of interspecies cooperation on a scale never before seen. But Jake was thinking beyond the immediate military advantages. It's not about hitting them harder, Emma. It's about showing them a better way. Look around us. Every species here chose to be part of this alliance. That's something the Dominion has never experienced. Dr. Chen approached with the latest translations from the Builder ruins. General, there's something else you need to know. The Builders didn't just fall because they tried to dominate the Guardians. They were facing an external threat, something they called the Void Devour. Jake felt a chill despite the warm atmosphere inside Earthrender's protective energy field. What was it? According to these records, it was a cosmic entity that consumed entire star systems. The Builders tried to turn the Guardians into weapons to fight it, which led to their civil war and eventual destruction. Earthrender's voice rumbled through the space around them. The Void Devourer still exists, young human. It slumbers in the dark spaces between galaxies, but it can be awakened. Your Dominion enemies may not realize the danger they court with their aggressive expansion. As the Alliance fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the next phase of the war, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching something much larger than a simple territorial conflict. The partnership between species that had started with one injured Razorback pup was becoming something that might determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The ancient Guardians had chosen to trust humanity's approach to cooperation. Now it remained to be seen whether that trust would be enough to face the ultimate test that lay ahead. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship, watching Earth grow larger through the viewport. After 2 years of war across the galaxy, the final battle had come to humanity's home system. The Dominion's ultimate weapon, the Void Devourer, hung in space like a wound in reality itself, slowly consuming everything around it. Status report, Jake commanded, though he already knew the situation was desperate. All Federation fleets have fallen back to Earth's outer defense grid, reported Admiral Emma Walsh from her position at the tactical console. The Void Devourer has consumed 3 planets in the Sol system already. Mars, Venus, and Mercury are gone. Jake watched the horrific sight through the main display. The cosmic entity was exactly as the ancient builder records had described it, a living darkness that existed only to consume. Starships, planets, even light itself disappeared into its hungry void. Time until it reaches Earth? Jake asked. 4 hours at current rate of expansion, replied the navigation officer. Around Earth's orbit, the largest fleet in galactic history had assembled. Federation ships from dozens of worlds fought alongside their alien partners. In a desperate attempt to slow the creature's advance, Razorbacks phased through space in protective suits, gathering intelligence on the entity's structure. Thornlings had grown massive living ships that could regenerate faster than the Void Devourer could consume them. The 3 ancient guardians, Earthrender, Stoneweaver, and Void Toucher, used their cosmic powers to create temporary barriers, but nothing was working. The Void Devourer was too large, too hungry, and too powerful for any conventional attack. "Admiral," called Dr. Rebecca Stone from the science station, "I'm reading something strange. The entity isn't just consuming matter and energy, it's feeding on the fear and desperation of everyone around it. The more afraid we are, the stronger it becomes." Jake felt a chill of understanding. It's not just a cosmic predator. It's a fear eater. That's why it was attracted to this galaxy. All the war and conflict has been feeding it. Emma looked up from her station with grim realization. Then how do we fight something that grows stronger from our fear? Before Jake could answer, communications came in from across the fleet. The Dominion Emperor himself was requesting a direct meeting. After ordering the entity to consume Federation worlds, he had discovered he could not control it. The Void Devourer had turned on its supposed masters and was now consuming Dominion ships with equal hunger. "Put him through," Jake ordered. The holographic projection showed Emperor Valdris, the absolute ruler of the Dominion, looking older and more desperate than Jake had ever seen him. "Admiral Morrison, I request immediate ceasefire. The weapon has turned against us. We cannot control it." "You never could control it," Jake replied. "The ancient builders learned that lesson the hard way. The Void Devourer feeds on domination and fear. The more you try to control it, the stronger it becomes. Then how do we stop it?" the Emperor asked, his pride finally broken by the sight of his empire being consumed. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew, humans, Razorbacks, Thornlings, reformed Void Stalkers, and others working together without fear or hierarchy. "We don't fight it. We transform it." The plan that emerged over the next hour was the most ambitious cooperation effort in galactic history. Every species in the Alliance would contribute their unique abilities to attempt something that had never been tried, changing the very nature of a cosmic entity through the power of unified positive intention. "It sounds impossible," admitted Dr. Stone as she ran calculations on the proposed solution. "So did partnership with the Razorbacks," Jake replied. "So did healing the Thornling collective consciousness. So did awakening the ancient guardians. We've been doing impossible things for 3 years now." The operation began with the Thornlings growing a massive network of living communication relays that connected every mind in the Alliance fleet. Humans, aliens, and ancient guardians all joined the network voluntarily, creating a collective consciousness based on choice rather than compulsion. Through the network, Jake could feel the thoughts and emotions of millions of beings. There was fear, yes, but there was also something stronger: hope, determination, and an absolute refusal to give up on the dream of peaceful cooperation. The Razorbacks led the first phase, using their phasing abilities to approach the Void Devourer without being consumed. But instead of attacking, they projected the memories of every successful partnership they had experienced. The joy of working with humans, the satisfaction of accomplishment, the warmth of trust between species. The Thornlings followed, extending their root networks through space itself, and sharing the experience of healing from their infected collective consciousness. They showed the Void Devourer what it felt like to be freed from pain and confusion. The reformed Void Stalkers contributed their memories of choosing cooperation over conquest, of discovering that they could be more than weapons. Their transformation from perfect killers to willing partners demonstrated that even the most programmed minds could change. The ancient guardians provided the cosmic power needed to reach an entity of such vast scale. Earthrender, Stoneweaver, and Void Toucher combined their matter, manipulation abilities to create a bridge between the collective consciousness and the cosmic hunger. But it was the humans who provided the crucial element, the memory of what it felt like to be alone and afraid, and how much better life became when that loneliness was transformed into connection. Jake felt himself at the center of the network, sharing his own journey from a skeptical military officer to someone who had learned to see every being as a potential partner. He projected the memory of that first injured razorback pup, the moment when trust had overcome fear and opened the door to everything that followed. The effect on the Void Devourer was immediate and dramatic. The entity, which had existed only to consume, suddenly experienced something it had never known, the feeling of being welcomed rather than feared. Through the cosmic network, Jake felt the creature's ancient loneliness, its endless hunger that could never be satisfied by destruction alone. The Void Devourer had been consuming civilizations for millions of years, but it had never experienced acceptance or belonging. "It's working," reported Dr. Stone, her voice filled with wonder. "The entity's consumption rate is slowing. Its energy signature is changing." On the main display, the dark void that had been devouring everything around it began to shift and change. Instead of absorbing light, it began to emit a gentle glow. The hungry darkness transformed into something that looked almost like a cosmic flower, beautiful and alive. The Void Devourer spoke for the first time in its existence, its voice reaching every mind in the network. "I remember now. Before the hunger, before the endless consuming, I was meant to be a gardener of stars, not a destroyer of worlds." Jake felt tears on his cheeks as he experienced the entity's recovered memories. It had been created by an ancient civilization as a cosmic force for growth and creation, but eons of feeding only on fear and destruction had corrupted its original purpose. "You can choose a new purpose now," Jake said through the network. "You can choose to create instead of destroy." The transformation was complete. Where the Void Devourer had been, there was now a cosmic entity dedicated to nurturing life rather than consuming it. It began immediately to restore the planets it had consumed, recreating Mars, Venus, and Mercury with new ecosystems more beautiful than before. Emperor Valdris, watching from his flagship, surrendered unconditionally. But more importantly, he asked to join the alliance that had accomplished the impossible. The Dominion soldiers, seeing their ultimate weapon choose cooperation over conquest, laid down their arms and requested to learn about partnership. In the months that followed, the galaxy was rebuilt on entirely new principles. The Federation Council was restructured to include representatives from every allied species, with decisions made through consensus rather than domination. The Beast Cavalry Division became a permanent institution, training beings from across the galaxy in partnership-based relationships. Jake, now promoted to Galactic Alliance Coordinator, found himself back where it all began, on a training world similar to Valdris Prime. But instead of military exercises designed to test dominance, young beings from dozens of species learned to build trust and cooperation. He watched a human child playing with a young razorback, while a thornling sapling provided shade and a juvenile voidstalker taught them both about patience and precision. The cosmic entity that had once been the Void Devourer maintained beautiful gardens on every world, creating new life wherever it had once brought destruction. Emma approached as Jake stood watching the next generation learn the lessons it had taken the galaxy so long to understand. "Any regrets?" she asked. "You could have been a traditional military hero. Instead, you became something unprecedented, a teacher of cooperation." Jake smiled as he watched the children of different species working together to solve a puzzle that would have been impossible for any single group. "No regrets. We didn't just win a war, Emma. We taught the galaxy a new way of living." In the distance, the ancient guardian Earthrender was helping to plant new trees while sharing stories with fascinated youngsters from a dozen different worlds. The creature that had once been feared as a weapon of mass destruction was now beloved as a teacher and protector. "The Builder records were right about one thing," Jake said quietly. "Partnership is stronger than domination. Cooperation creates possibilities that force never could." As the evening approached, Jake listened to the sounds of the training camp, laughter, friendly competition, and the excited chatter of young beings discovering that differences were strengths rather than threats. The fierce beasts that had once been seen as impossible to tame had become willing partners in building a better galaxy. The Razorbacks had taught them about trust and loyalty. The Thornlings had shown them the power of healing and growth. The Voidstalkers had demonstrated that anyone could choose a new path. The ancient Guardians had shared wisdom about the deep connections between all living things. And the transformed cosmic entity proved that even the most destructive forces could become sources of creation and beauty. But perhaps most importantly, they had all learned that true strength came not from conquering others, but from helping them become the best versions of themselves. Jake Morrison had started as a simple military captain, trying to pass a training exercise. He had become the architect of a new age where every being, no matter how different or dangerous they seemed, was seen as a potential partner in the great work of building a peaceful and prosperous galaxy. The fierce beasts had not been tamed. They had been invited to become family, and in accepting that invitation, they had transformed not just themselves but everyone around them. The stars shone peacefully over a galaxy finally at peace with itself, where cooperation had triumphed over conquest and where every creature, from the smallest to the most cosmic, knew they had a place where they belonged.